5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Walk with me through the cellar door.
The storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Vaccinations, right? You know, and the reason we wanted to bring Dr. Abby on, right, is because she is specifically an expert at the field of vaccinations. And I say that because I think it drives her nuts every time because she has a specific title and she has a specific area of expertise, but I always give her more credit than anybody else. But without further ado, let's bring on Keith and Abby. Welcome to the show, team.
Hi, guys. I think I'm getting older because I think your intro just keeps getting like louder and louder. Like I'm getting old. The rock is getting too hard for me.
Oh, man,
That's just
the only one that says that. 2 weeks ago we had a political candidate on from California. And he thought it was amazing. He's like, we should do more metal in politics, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, it was good. It was just loud. I'm just like, turn it down. You just gotta chill the rock.
Kids in your rock music.
Well, it's
good, Kenny G.
No, we're not gonna. Nope, not on this show. There will not be Kenny. Kenny G's not even rock music. Kenny G is like, I don't know, like turpentine soft rock,
sexy jazz man.
With not even. I don't even consider him very good jazz, honestly.
It's
like
not. It's
generic garbage. There you go. There's my hot take.
Poor Kenny G. He's just minding his own business. I just came on to listen to some information about vaccines, and these people just start bashing me out of nowhere.
All right, Keith, you got to tweet him. Tell him we're going to talk about his.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for bringing you into this. He did nothing wrong.
So before we begin, Abby, why don't you go ahead and give us a real quick rundown about yourself, where you work at, just so everybody knows kind of who hasn't heard the show before, knows a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I am very much a jack of all trades, which is, I'm a PhD virologist. I'm a classically trained virologist, old school virology. I study HIV evolution over time within patients, within populations. And actually over the years that has transitioned more and more over into immunology. And ultimately, you really can't study one without the other because you have this intricate dance of how a virus evolves within a person and within a population, and how that person's immune system is fighting the virus, and how the population is fighting the virus, and different ways you need to develop new vaccination technologies and strategies, and really most of my training is in the context of HIV, and really say this modestly, our most challenging vaccine target and virological target to date. So I come at this topic from both angles, both the virology and immunology, and in the context of vaccine design as well.
Awesome. And that's we had you on, I think, in episode 170 to talk about the base value of vaccines and understanding the concepts, the terms, and then debunking some of the I don't want to call them popular, but the
Common.
anti-vax
Common.
Comedic. They used to comedic.
Comedic. Yeah, they've gotten less comedic, but common.
Yeah, so we did that, and the link is in the description if anybody wants to check out the old show. It's got to been, I don't know, episode 170, whenever God's Green Earth that was. So that was less than 50 weeks ago, but more than 6 months ago. So there's your time frame, folks. Anyway, so we thought we'd have Abby back on tonight because we want to talk a little bit about the new vaccines that have come out. And one of the big things, for me that when I was looking at is we have competing vaccinations from competing companies. So I know Pfizer because I'm from Michigan. So they're very big.
That's how
here.
you're going there. Okay.
But the question becomes is I get why we would have competing ones. I understand that's how the market works. But the question is, as they're competing, what does that mean for the general public?
So the ones you all know about really are just the ones that like you guys know about. So there's a huge wave of vaccines behind the ones that, Moderna, Pfizer, the Oxford vaccine. But no, there's a ton of additional preclinical vaccines that are in, let's say, animal models right now, because we all didn't know. Like 6 months ago, we didn't necessarily know whether these vaccines were going to work or not. So it's not like scientists were just sitting on their hands going, well, we got to wait, we got to see, and we're going to put all of our eggs in these baskets, and we've got to wait until we see the results before we start working on anything else. No way. In March, all of our research was shut down. Every academic institution, at least in the United States, was shut down. And so you had all of these HIV researchers, you had all these influenza researchers, you had some of the top minds in vaccine design who were told, okay, you can't work on your work anymore unless it's COVID related. So they all just like Eye of Sauron, laser focus their expertise on COVID-19 and kind of put their own spin, their own twist on a potential vaccine. So in addition to the ones that you guys have heard about in the news and the new reports about efficacy and have already made it through all the trials and Project Warp Speed and all this stuff, there's a huge wave coming in behind as well. And we're just learning all kinds of cool things as well. As far as what this actually means to people, so, I mean, a lot of this is production. It's like to make so many vaccines, to have the infrastructure to make and produce and transport and distribute all of these vaccines. The many big deals. One of the big deal that you might have heard of is the necessary very cold temperatures for the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines. Pfizer -80, Moderna -20, -30-ish. Like, good luck getting that to rural areas of Pakistan. Or, I mean, honestly, there are very practical, strategic ways that vaccine just might not work well in a large portion of the planet. And we can keep throwing money at it, which is one of the reasons why this whole process went so quickly. Of the many reasons this process went so quickly, is that we threw a ton of money at this process. So we can throw a bunch of refrigerated trucks and this, that, or the other at everything. But we're probably going to need other solutions and alternative solutions. So, I mean, let's say somebody might have an allergy to one of the ingredients or something or other. You want to have varieties.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Sorry, she was saying, Abby was saying, there's a lot of different ones. Just one of the websites that I pulled up while I was doing some background before the show. I think I'm looking at about 51 vaccines. Not all of them are phase 3. A good chunk of them are. Like there's the Johnson & Johnson one, Sinovac, CanSino, and then there are some that are, just phase 2. And as you mentioned, a lot that were just preclinicals. So that it looks like we're working to get a good variety, as you were saying.
Yeah.
So,
and they're radically different. Now listen, when I say radically different, what has happened is other vaccine designers, formulators, they've taken their strategy and applied it to COVID. So they aren't inventing something out of the blue. But they're just putting their spin on it. And so that's how we're able to attack this virus with lots of different vaccines, lots of different angles.
But how similar are they? I mean, okay, I guess you explained that they're similar, right? Because everything's based off a very close model and then given a different twist. But the question becomes when the similarities start moving apart, how do we know which one will be more effective? Or is it really not that big of a deal because the similarities will be more surface level, like it could be refrigerated versus not, or you could take it in a pill versus getting shot in the ass with it.
Yeah. And actually that's a huge thing too, because I mean, think about it, like getting a sterile needle and disposing of those sterile needles, like there are practical aspects of rolling out a vaccine that in the US and in Canada and such, we think, oh, that's not a big deal. But there are other parts of the world where that actually is a big deal. So having a vaccine that you could, for example, take in a pill would be fantastic. But yes, so the good news about this particular virus is we do have a very good idea of what we call a correlate of protection is. And so through some of these vaccine trials, through studying people who have been infected, what appears to be protective of people is called neutralizing antibodies. So you have the virus. It is a sack of fat that it is stolen from an infected cell, and there are viral proteins stuck in it. And it uses those viral proteins to stick to a new cell to infect the new cell. And our bodies will make antibodies that stick to those viral proteins and keep them from interacting with a new cell. And so it seems like most of the vaccines, as long as you've got the information for that protein spike, that seems like it is enough for protection. So why it has worked out, again, of the many reasons it's worked out so well in these mRNA vaccines, is that through that technology, what it is the information, directions to code for that viral protein. And you put it in a different fat, let's call it like a fake virus, and it is only information for that viral protein. And you put some bells and whistles on it to make sure your immune system doesn't like attack the information, because your body will also think it's kind of a virus and try to break it down. It's a different story. But what it means is you can deliver the instructions to make a viral protein, and your body will make the viral protein just like you were infected with the virus. And then your body will make an immune response to that viral protein, even though you're not really infected with it. Now, we've done that 1 billion times before in other vaccines. So you will get a vaccine that only has bits of that viral protein in it. The problem is, on the scientific side, we have to figure out the exact structure of that viral protein. There was in the news recently about that AI program that has figured out how to fold things better. And like you guys you remember folding at home?
Yeah.
That we
Yeah,
used to
covered
have
that actually on the show a couple weeks ago.
So like just because we have a sequence of a protein doesn't mean we actually know what it looks like. And the way your immune system works, it's by shape. So if we put in a vaccine a viral protein that's shaped wrong, then your immune system learns how to fight it wrong, and it's not actually protective. So when we have a vaccine that's just a viral protein, it takes a long time to figure out that shape. And how do we make that shape in the lab and purify a bunch of it and make it stable at the right time, and all those production issues start coming into play, which we've already done and people are already doing for other formulations of the vaccine. But with the mRNA vaccine, we didn't have to worry about that because your body is making it just like it would if you were actually infected. We don't have to worry about the structure. We don't have to worry about how that protein folds. Your body just does it. Yeah.
So that was one thing that actually I was kind of hoping to touch on, is because from my very elementary understanding is mRNA vaccines are something that we've been working towards, but they're still like something we don't have in circulation. So I guess the boiled down version of my question is like, what's kind of the significance of the fact that we're now releasing vaccines that are mRNA?
It's faster.
Okay.
It's faster than some of these other. We have lots of other ways to kind of get there. We have other ways to deliver information and instructions as opposed to the actual protein. But then your body kind of fights those ways. Your body is always fighting things. And so that's also a problem with the mRNA is, how do you get it in and get that information actually delivered as opposed to your body just disintegrating the message before the message can be turned into a protein. And that's a huge technological leap. And it just means we can do things faster now. And so I know there were some people who are like, oh, we can make universal flu vaccines and that sort of thing now because of this. No, I mean, not from my understanding. Like, you still need to know what to put in. You still need to know what sequence to put in. And so, what we want to put in a flu vaccine that changes every year is always going to change. And let's say you can't. It's a very, very long, complicated answer. But one of the hopes of this kind of vaccine is let's say with influenza, let's pretend there's 200 different kinds of flu. To vaccinate against 200 different kinds of flu in any of the traditional means is extraordinarily complicated, if not impossible. But with mRNA, in theory, you could design 200 different mRNA messages and put those all into one vaccine. But in practicality, the way your immune system works is one of those 200, and this is just me hypothesizing. Of those, here's the cool thing is we can actually try this now. Of those 200, one of them is really going to get your immune system's attention, and it's just going to hyperfixate on one of those 200 and just ignore the other 199. Because as I said, it's just information that codes for a protein. It's not like a real viral infection that your body absolutely has to fight off and clear. So in theory, your body can just ignore it and it will be broken down and secreted and filtered out in your kidneys. And that's the end of that. So I think some of these pie in the sky hopes for mRNA vaccines are a bit too far, but the cool thing is we in theory could actually test this now. We could actually do something like that in, let's say, a non-human primate model and see what happens. Whereas, I mean, that would be completely impossible. But to actually produce and purify 200 different, let's say, influenza proteins and put them in the same vaccine just to see what happens, that would be almost impossible. Yeah.
So with that being said, so that's kind of the differences that are not so different. And I think that's exciting news to hear about, being able to use an mRNA, because I don't think that, that's not something normal people talk about. I'll tell you what, that's never come up except for when you come on my show, ever.
I think weird thoughts.
But the logic of it, is genius, because, and think about it, because if you could figure out why does the cell only want to pick up one line of code and hyperfixate and fix that and find that source to say, no, I want you to look at all of them, and you could figure out how to trigger your body to do that. I mean, can you imagine the types of vaccinations that can be developed and brought across the world?
So I think about this stuff because it was actually one of the avenues of some of my research is, so some people infected with HIV develop just like these gold star antibodies called broadly neutralizing antibodies. These antibodies can recognize and stop lots and lots and lots of different kinds of HIV, even though the individual, of course, is only infected with one kind of HIV. And then other individuals, they have a hard time stopping the virus they are infected with. And when I looked at the antibodies that evolved in these different kinds of people, what I found is that the people who made the broadly neutralizing antibodies, it's all evolution, by the way. The way your immune system works is by mutation and natural selection. And so in the broadly neutralizing group, you found this kind of low affinity, broad, I'm gonna explore my options. I'm gonna try lots of things. I'm not gonna focus too much on, yes, very liberal arts, not focused on a major, just trying lots of different things. Whereas in the individuals who could not even neutralize their own virus, their antibodies were just so fixated on this one little part of a protein, just bound so tight, and it wasn't a neutralizing epitope. Like it was part of a virus that it could stick to, but it didn't actually stop the virus. But it just bound so tight that it was so focused, laser focused on something that didn't matter. So how do you stop that?
I don't know. That's what we pay you guys,
yeah,
or you all to do.
I just sort of wandered. I didn't figure out why. I just sort of wandered off. I made an observation, walking away.
All right, so
Cool.
with that being said, so I gotta ask the one question everybody wants to ask, right? Did they specifically withhold vaccinations to change the election? And I don't care how long your answer is, you get up to 2 minutes, but you can have as little as 1 second. All you got to do is answer. So did they do that? Was there a big conspiracy?
She didn't even need 2 seconds.
No. So when you run, so I work in a branch of Emory that really focuses on our clinical trials. And so we do clinical trials of the vaccines, not just the COVID-19 vaccines, but lots of vaccines, different drugs and therapeutics and whatnot. Clinical trials are tightly managed and regulated on the front end. I am a research scientist. We are the Wild West. We do whatever. We have an idea in our head and we're like, hey, let's try this. And I order a kit and we do it. And it's like, whatever. You do not do that in a clinical trial. In a clinical trial, They have meetings on how to put labels on tubes. And you think, oh, that's ridiculous, that's silly. But when you think about the fact that there are 50 research sites all around the world, everybody is sending the tubes to the exact same repository. You have to be able to go to, the exact freezer, open up that freezer, go to the exact box, get the exact box, check the tube, be able to get the barcode, make sure you're pulling the exact right tube, and not sit there and go, oh, is that the right tube? Oh, is that the right tube? Oh, is that the right tube? Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of samples. You can't sit there and do that. The samples will be thawed by the time you find the right tube. Things are regulated, and that's all done on the front end. You know exactly what test you're going to do, exactly everything that's going to happen on the front end. There are set points where, okay, if we hit this enrollment threshold, once we hit this data point, once we hit whatever, somebody is going to unblind data, see what's going on, make sure, listen, if they unblind the data and let's say, there's absolutely no benefit whatsoever to the vaccine, then we got to stop. And that's happened in HIV research. That's happened where we've stopped trials because they've reached a time point, they've unblinded the data, an outside group has performed the agreed upon statistical analyses and said, this is doing nothing, stop. And they pull the plug. And I can get you guys references if you want to add that later. I mean, it's
the answer of no was sufficient for us.
And just to prove the just nail in the coffin, I've been doing nothing. Like I said, our research is really like grinded to a halt, especially since I use humans in my studies, and it's difficult, if not impossible, to be able to enroll humans during all of this. So I've been doing a lot of writing, submitting grants, and all of my collaborators are infectious disease physicians. So they've all been working in their respective hospitals since March. On the Monday that the Moderna trial was unblinded, I guess it was like 2 weeks after the election, we had meetings set for a grant submission. We had Zoom calls. We were gonna meet to talk about one of my submissions, and they had to be canceled because they were all in PR conferences and such all day long talking about the vaccine. Nobody knew until 7 a.m. when
they were
yeah.
So the probability is so low it's not even worth statistically analyzing.
Well, no, it's not. There's no probability it wasn't.
I mean, Trump saying that he was going to push one by the 3rd, within days of the election. If anything, he was the one trying to set it up. But
so that's the other thing. The whole reason that's the fast. I mean, first of all, that's the fastest any vaccine has ever been through this process ever. Like, so the fact that it was a week or 2 weeks after the election that, we got any of these results. So really there was no way to make that go any faster or any slower. There's no way to control that process. The stop points were people getting infected. And so if, for example, people in the vaccine trial were wearing their mask, we're socially distancing, we're not going out, and just people weren't getting infected, then we still wouldn't have any results because there would still be 0 infections in the vaccine group and 0 infections in the placebo group. So it depends on what.
It's like a catch-22. It's like, we want you to say social distance, but if you don't, come join our trial.
Yeah. Well, and that's so that we have run into this exact same thing in HIV prevention trials. We have different drugs and different modalities we use for HIV prevention. And then sometimes, depending on the social groups, they actually do the behavioral intervention. We give counseling on how to prevent HIV in other ways. And so we have to stop the trial because nobody in either one of the groups is getting HIV, and that's great. But things like that happen in vaccine trials. One of the reasons why things went so quickly is because our cases are through the roof in the United States because we're idiots. We are absolute, complete morons. And so there was so much infection around that they hit those marks of infections in the placebo and the vaccine group that they could get good statistics.
So when Trump said he'll have a vaccination to us by the election time,
yes, he was confident in our idiocy. Yeah.
So it was like purpose idiocy.
Yeah.
Maybe that's going to be the only good thing he's ever known for.
Yeah.
Maybe that will be.
And I mean, if I can hazard maybe a little wild speculation on that one, he's also like modern conservative politics is all about poisoning the well. So basically, no matter what, you're always winning because you've already set the other people up to fail. You've tied all their shoes together, and as soon as the starter gun goes off, you can just saunter on through while everybody's falling over themselves. At least that's my take on it.
Anyway, we're gonna move past that a second because we're gonna get to the last topic I really wanted to talk about. Because I promised a half hour, we're a little over, and I don't. I know you got to work tomorrow, so I don't want to hold you up from your 5 a.m. vaccination route that you guys have every morning to talk about the secret vaccines none of us are allowed to know about. But,
well, we've got to get our shipment of microchips in.
There you go. You got to invent it.
Our microchips in.
Say hi to Bill Gates for me, would you?
So really, it's now down to effectiveness of the vaccination, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I ran a couple of scenarios, like 60% probably is low for acceptance rate. But based on our electorate right now, I would say 60% is probably good in America, at least. In Keith's world, it's like 0% because they're all anti-COVID up there. But if 60% of the U.S. was to get vaccinated, let's say, or whatever percent you want to pick on, how long would it take to lift some of these restrictions? Right? Like, is it something that's going to allow Corona to die off faster? And I ask this question very pointedly because if I have anti-vaxxers watching my show who say, no way, we're not doing this, but we get 60% and we talk 3 months lifting the ban, or 100% of us in 1 month, is that even a possibility if we had that much compliance?
Well, I think, this is me just talking. I don't know. I think probably what's going to happen is you're going to have pockets of people who won't get it. And that's where you will see flare-ups of outbreaks of this. And you're just going to see like, in these little communities of people who refuse to get vaccinated because we're social creatures. We don't stay in our little community. Sure, if you don't want to get vaccinated and everybody stays in a little community and nobody goes anywhere and nobody comes in, okay, that's not the way things work. My issue is, those of us who do get the vaccine, who do protect ourselves, who do try to get this fire under control. Myself, even after I get the vaccine, do I want to keep wearing the mask? I kind of want to, because, we don't necessarily know at this point how long. I mean, we can't know that these vaccines last a year because we haven't had them a year. And as one of these idiots who refuses to get the vaccine going to get me sick when I thought I when I thought I protected myself, but yet my immunity waned. And it's just, a thing where you can't trust the person sitting next to you. It's really quite frustrating.
So yeah, and I guess I just kind of compare it to, if we look at like the measles vaccine, I believe they're like 80 to 85% effective with a couple of vaccinations, but there's still that probability, right?
But you get people, but you get kids when they're young, you get them on their wellness visits, there's like a more regimented way you get them before they hit school. There's more ways, I think, to kind of make that gap as small as possible. In this instance, it's 2 shots. All of us have to go in. All of us have to make appointments in our schedules to go in. The side effects are going to suck on the second one. Honestly, I mean, just heads up, you're not going to feel good after the second one. And once that starts going around, oh, I got the second shot and I got COVID from it. And I got, it's going to be harder to get people to go in to get the second one. Bribe yourself with pizza and ice cream or something. But
whiskey.
Yeah, anything to go in, say,
Whiskey,
okay, take the afternoon off if you can. And then there's people who can't take the afternoon off to feel like shit. And they're saying, oh, it's only like 5%, whatever. Well, okay. So there's 7 billion people on the planet, and 5% of 7 billion is a lot of people who are going to feel like shit.
50 million. 350 million?
I don't know that number off the top of my head either. I was just seeing if Abby
a lot of people. No, it's a lot of people. That's my math. But and I'm just assuming that I'm going to be one of those people who feels like shit. I'm going to get it. I have just, I'm like, knock on wood. My grandmother passed from a C. diff infection. And that is an infection that we know now can be treated with the fecal transplant. I don't know whether you guys have heard of that, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And you think, oh, yeah, but it could literally save your life. And so I'm just thinking of all those people who are going to die between now and when these vaccines are rolled out and available, and the people who refuse to, could you imagine having a C. diff infection and it's going to kill you, and you refuse to get a fecal transplant because Steve Jobs put a tracer in it, But it's the people who die right before the thing comes that could save them, the technologically.
Well, you're bringing us down.
Yeah.
All right.
So we only had Kenny G.
Reality sucks.
No, we don't need Kenny G. That's just gonna make me angry. I'll play some Kenny G on
some
the after
soothing,
show for you.
calming.
Yeah.
Sexy
so for
sax
those
man.
of you who are subscribers to our Patreon, we do an after show. I'll play Kenny G in there because it's not on YouTube, so nobody can see it. And that's gonna be. I have a playlist. While we were having this conversation, I brought up a playlist to play in the after show. So if you want us hear us listen to Kenny G, and don't tell Hannah that we're doing this when he joins in.
Or do
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your host, Christopher Tan.
That was fun.
I have no idea why it replayed it. It's not supposed to do that. Hello,
Oopsie
everyone.
poopsie.
Welcome back to the show.
The cheers moment. Dink.
Here we go.
Tonight's show has been brought to you by bugs.
And Chris's smaller head and stronger alcohols.
I like the alcohols.
Yeah.
Potent potables, as they were.
Oh, well, thank you all so much. Thanks for joining us. We're going to dive into our next segment.
Yeah.
Answering
Well,
conservative questions.
First off, I'm here. I magically made it in. I appeared out of nowhere. Unfortunately, I missed the IB segment. I feel surprisingly validated because she mentioned a couple of things that I've actually had as quick saves and things throughout the show. So we're on a good scientific wavelength. If I'm at least bringing you guys into the category of places you are adjacent to real science.
Fair enough. And that's the best part of that is, and I understand, like, in your world you can't, you know, it is what it is, but we appreciate you joining us.
That's what you appreciate about him.
It is.
It's definitely not
Anyway,
your
so
keyboard spanging. Ding, ding, ding.
Tonight's conservative question is: should restaurant owners be allowed to raise funds to pay state fines incurred from not closing? So, for example, there was a restaurant that decided it was going to stay open after Whitmer closed all and eating in the restaurant down, and they got, I think, 2 warnings, maybe 3 warnings, and essentially what they did is they got a bunch of fines from the state, and they decided to run a GoFundMe.
Yes.
To pay them.
I don't know. One of the things that you run into is that, I mean, if you're raising funds for anything, right? If you crowdsource whatever you want, if people are willing to bring that money in or bring something in like that, you know, if people are willing to pay for that kind of stuff, it's a weird messaging thing. It's just like, should people be allowed to raise funds to pay their medical bills or something like that? Like, when it comes to the state fines or everything, it's a little bit fishy because it's, you know, them not being ethical. And so it's a weird problem that we have. It's just like, people have called money part of your freedom of speech thanks to Citizens United. This kind of falls into that category. So legally, I'm gonna guess that through that ruling, that it should technically be allowed under a current precedent for people to use their money as their free speech to help people pay things like that. I personally don't think they should. I think that this should be a legal mandate that you have to come up with your own money to pay the things that you did while being a bad person or a bad company. But it's kind of hard to, you know, like, demand that money to come from a place. You know what I mean? So, like, you have to bring this money out of your paycheck or your checkbook or your checking account or your savings account. Okay, well, how are you going to know that's coming from what, where, how, and when? So, I mean, it's gross, and it's a weird byproduct of the weirdness of the weird crowdsourcing garbage that we call our
Sorry, is it weird? You said it's weird?
It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating that people basically can, like, crowdsourcing is considered a regular thing in any kind of payment scheme, but whatever it is. It's like, one of the things they recommend in a lot of medical cases when you come down with cancer or something, they say you should try to crowdsource about $10,000, and then that'll be a good place for you to be financially. Like, why should we be crowdsourcing that? But, you know,
excuse me,
everything is a social campaign now, and it doesn't surprise me that this is something it'd be hard to say no to, but I don't think it should be, but I have no idea how to say no, you can't do that.
So I don't like the fact that I'm going to answer in line with Hannah, because I don't necessarily agree with that on a personal level, but seeing as we try to be the side that has integrity, which I mean, I know bites us in the ass a lot more often than not, but whatever.
That's so
And I'm going to caveat the hell out of my stance. I'm saying yes, it's a thing that should be allowed to happen, because I mean, how often do we see crowdfunding being used for, you know, other shit, right? I mean, there's charities and things like that. Cool. If people want to throw their money away on somebody who refuses to adhere to the law that they only think needs to be enforced when, you know, it comes to people who have a different skin tone, I mean, shithead's gonna shithead, right?
Kyle Rittenhouse. Sorry, I sneezed a little bit there.
Yeah, that's a blood boiling moment and a half. But I don't believe that it should be allowed to like go unchecked. And it should be something. I don't think it's something that we should publicly stand in the way of, in the sense that I don't think the government should say, no, you're not allowed to raise money any way you can. But I do think there should be some sort of regulation. So, for example, like taxed based, like you're taxed in a particular way based off of certain measures that can be decided by people who, you know, are smarter than me, and will work it in such a way that it closes it as a loophole, so they don't just get free money, but they actually, they have to pay for it. But in the private sense, I think that crowdfunding sites have the ability to say, you're allowed to use our services to raise money for X, but not for Y. And we will take the necessary measures to prevent you from using our services if you attempt to use it for Y. So the way I'm seeing this is kind of like platforming. So where you have like Twitter, Facebook, and social media things that I don't know because I'm gray hairing now and yelling at kids to get off my lawn and muttering about their clothing. Private companies reserve the right to say no. And I recognize that corporations aren't people. They can and do bow to market forces. Well, I mean, courtesy of our, but how many articles over the last decade have we seen where, it's the title is millennials have ruined blank industry, when our generation just basically decided that we didn't agree with existing business practices or the mismanagement of the economy. So like the funny thing is that we played by their rules and we beat them at it, and they didn't like that, right? But them's the rules. They'll lose to those same rules. Now, and I know that there are problems with groupthink, and we need to be careful of that. But the choppy metaphor here is that a restaurant owner who is a piece of human jeopardizing shit, having money crowdfunded to pay their fines is just kind of a battle in a greater war. So long as we don't get complacent with our smallest victories, and so long as we keep fighting for what's right, sooner or later, history is just going to forget those who bravely stood up to government overreach because they thought that their right to risk the health of others was the only thing that mattered. So let them. How long is it going to be before everybody else looks at that and goes, you know what, that's a business that doesn't care about my health, my well-being. For example, I don't know if you heard about the barbecue fast food place in Toronto, but the police actually put up a blockade to keep people from going there because they kept looking and being like, no, we're going to open. We're going to stay open. And in Ontario, they've been putting in a lot more measures, especially in comparison to Alberta. And, a lot of people, sure, they're going to have their business. But we've also seen campaigns where smaller places like that go to business real quick because, it gets uncovered that they have a lot of problems with following health code violations and adhering to those. And that was one such place where it was dug up that, in the last few years, they have routinely just passed their health code violations because they've changed small things in the heat of the moment. So their business practices already suck. People aren't going to forget that. They're going to be like, no, that place, they're dirty. I'm not going. And eventually they'll fall, they'll crumble, and they'll suffer their own consequences. At least I hope.
I take the different approach on this one. And I say, to some extent, I agree that everybody has, their own ability to own a business, do a business to some extent, kind of for whatever they want. But at the exact same time, if you get this, and like there should be a rule in the government where if they do these things, right, I'm going to violate health code. I'm going to purposely keep open during a pandemic after being told not to. So if I completely violate this, my tax rate goes from here to here. Just off the charts. Like, put them out of business. And then the government should be even more progressive and say, okay, hey, go to the employees and say, we will help pay your unemployment, what your wages were. You prove it to us, we'll pay it for you. You go find another job. Here's 2 months of unemployment for you to have to leave a company that's awful. Like, this is awful health practices. And, like, then if they want to do the GoFundMes, fuck it. Let them. I guess at that point, it's like, I'm not going to police that. But at the same time, if GoFundMe does that, they should be taxed in a different way for that. So they're accepting funds that go to a malice cause. Same way as if, like, somebody started a KKK rally, I need 20 grand to rent out Rosa Parks Circle. Fine. Let GoFundMe, go ahead and do it. But you should have ramifications. And if we need to do that through anti-tax deductions or something like that, fuck it. And I'm very open to saying, let's let businesses run themselves and not have as much oversight from the government. But the problem I have is that businesses don't tend to run themselves. Money tends to run them. So when we get down to the actual conversation, that business, instead of staying open, could have started a GoFundMe that said, hey, you could come pick up food from our for free with a $20 donation. This $20 is specifically going to the employees. And, to start this out, here's our $5,000. Here's our salary. We're not paying our employees this week. We're putting the money up through the GoFundMe just to prove that we, are going to, that they're getting paid for this. Or double it. I don't know. The restaurants, if it were a smart restaurant, they would put up their own money because that would get a GoFundMe going. I guarantee you. Hell, I would support that. Like, just because I wouldn't even buy the damn food. I'd be like, I'll tell you what, it was going to cost me $25 to eat here, have $50 and give it to these people. And I'm not going to drive across the state to fucking, eat your shit food. But, if it was really good food, maybe. But you know what I'm saying.
It's basically the assumption that the meritocracy exists, that the companies will do the right thing. And that line gets muddled because this is probably 50% the company's owners wanting to make a political statement and 50% the owners having a political view that economically doesn't coincide with following health guidelines from the smartest people in our country. It's a problem and a conundrum, but in the end, like we all kind of sort of agree that it's gross, but under the current rules it's allowed. But we would love to see like the rest of our world, the rest of our country say, no, you guys are doing a gross thing and we're going to penalize you for it in some way, shape, or form. That's the way like they talk about make racism I guess afraid again, make racists afraid again, is the idea that like it's been normalized at a point where they're not afraid anymore. They speak out a lot more. That's one of the reasons why we hear it way more. The same kind of things with this. It's like a couple of companies have said, no, I'm not going to do it. And a whole bunch of other companies say, hey, those guys didn't do it. We're also going to do it. And they didn't see any real ramifications for those actions. Those companies didn't get driven out of the city on fire in a wagon, a covered wagon or something, whatever stupid thing. Like, they were like, oh, well, the city just eventually let them just open up again. Like there was no harshness. Our society didn't just crush them. And that's what it takes sometimes to like really set the, the perspective to stop that behavior.
And that's a great segue, actually, Hanna. That's a great segue into our next segment because we promised on the show that we would not have audio glitches like I did. But we promised on the show that we would start tackling issues with the Biden campaign and their propositions and where they're at, as well as look at how do we start moving things farther left. And I think there's a new hashtag we need to start. And I don't know if I want to go exactly like Trump, because I like this better. Make America progressive. We could say make America progressive again, but they
when
never
was
were.
It really? Yeah.
So if we just say make America progressive, we now can create a map. See what I did there? We can create a map changing the future. I'm sorry.
I think I heard it. I think I heard what you said there.
Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. I feel very proud of that. Anyway,
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Moving
Map to the future.
Moving past that, though, because the idea is this is not about me. This is about collective ideas in the train of thought. And this came to me a day ago, maybe 2 days ago, actually. So I put this segment together on very short notice, and I did it because I was in a conversation with somebody who was posting this anti-vaccine gibberish about COVID, basically explaining that COVID is death numbers are not up. This is not like they're just putting big things. Blah, blah, blah. Yes, exactly. But there's this guy in there that was arguing with these people, and I was trying to be medium neutral, right? Like not like that's like
You?
Tanner neutral, yeah, like where I don't get angry
What?
and like tell you you're dumb.
Who-
But like
what?
I was like
a
we did a segment-
well-rested Tanner.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was this morning or yesterday morning. But but yeah, I said, hey, we did a segment on my show, Cellar Door Skeptics, and we talked about the numbers. Like I did the research. I have all of the things, and what I researched did match this, and I do data analytics for a living, kind of. So,
Well, I'm scared. I mean, when I look at that, I look up in the upper left-hand corner and I see the words "truth" out, and
Yep.
I'm worried. I'm worried.
You should be a little bit because this is not
And the fact that Jocelyn Benson has her own category.
Fair enough.
Anyone who's not familiar with Jocelyn Benson, Tanner?
I have no idea who she is, so no.
As far as I know, she's the Secretary of State for Michigan.
Oh, okay. Yes, that's about the attack. Then that's not why you should question it. You should question this because this is definitely underground media aspect.
Well, I'm
And
gonna
then
guess the Jocelyn
there's
Benson
some
thing also
leftist-
has a part with the Michigan vote being stolen
Yes.
or something.
Yep. No. This is not that. No.
No. The Jocelyn Benson category. Anyway, this is different.
Yes, this is different. And so I agree with you. There should be a little bit of skepticism when it comes to some of these, like some of these websites.
The word "truth" is such a red flag. It's so bad.
All right.
It's like,
Oh my
It's-
god!
that
You
is.
gotta get through the article though. You gotta
Okay,
get
so
through
let's
the
do it.
article because
let's do it.
getting through the article gets you to understand. And the reason I chose this article is because this guy somebody called this dude out for being a socialist on this Facebook page. And he came back and he's like, yeah, I'm a socialist. So what? What does that matter? Like what are we making fun of something? Like I'm for the people. Are you not?
Yeah.
And then I did a little bit of research and I was chatting with him and I started going through his Facebook page. We started talking about this and I was like, hey, our idea behind this, I just need to find something. And when I found this article on his page, I started to read through it and say, well, we've talked about dark money. We've talked about, some of these campaign finance laws that go into why these political organizations can just run things amok and we have nothing else. I thought it was a good topic for the show. So but before we get into that, I guess maybe I should back up, right? So the first thing that we have to do is say, okay, what are we trying to accomplish here? And my goal for this segment is to say, obviously Biden has money that he shouldn't have in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, it's a Republican and a Democratic problem, but we have to talk about what could be solutions, right? Instead of just worrying about whether this is how fake this is, the points that they're going to make are very valid. They really are.
That's fine.
So
basically, this is a right-wing criticism of where Joe Biden's money is coming from.
No,
It
this
isn't.
is leftists actually calling out the
Okay, so this is a hard socialist saying centrist money. We need to watch where it's coming from. Okay.
Yes. I mean, their topics talk about, they talk about the second recount. They talk about Georgia suing. They have some other stuff that's, like middle of the road, but for the most part, their stuff's pretty aggressive when it comes to that. So, like, your concern should really be how much woo-woo are we going to get into this and that type of thing.
Okay, so let's see what they got for this one then.
All right. So, essentially, they talk about how do we push Joe Biden to the left, right? We gotta talk through that, and that's what we agree on. He's a centrist at best. And I
Sounds like Jacobin magazine right now. Go left, hard. Sounds like the Jacobin magazine. That's what they talk about all the time right now. Is push Joe Biden to the left.
Yes. Yep. And so that's exactly what this is, though, is how do we move him? How do we make him more progressive so he can help make America more progressive, right? How do we get there? And, the difference is what they're doing is they're talking about, how are we alienating progressive voters, right? Which we know happened. I mean, we have personal friends that refuse to vote for Biden. At least I did. On Facebook
My
and in real
Facebook,
life.
yeah, it was everywhere
Yeah.
online. I was tired of hearing people just making announcements to the universe that they are just. I was like, I get it, okay, fine, but
Yeah.
it was a lot. It was a lot, and even with that, there's still a 7 million vote surplus on Biden's side. Holy, but still,
Exactly. And here's, he actually stated some of these things. He said there's nothing fundamentally wrong, that we need to change. Like we don't
he
need
told
to
he told his
fundamentally-
he told his funders in one of his campaign rallies, like rich people, that nothing would fundamentally change. That's one of the things Biden said specifically.
Yeah. And I don't know why Trump didn't use that as a call out every 2 seconds.
They did. They used it a lot.
I heard that he said things like that, but that was not like a mainstream media thing for weeks on end. That's what that should have been. Trump can make those things happen. Obviously, we know that. We know that. Come on, man.
I guess his strategist didn't think it was a good place to hit. I don't know.
Maybe. So winning progressives and being progressive is kind of a big deal, right? But the big thing is and they bring back and they say, well, let's look at the New Deal of the 30s, right? And everybody knows what the New Deal is. I had to write, I don't know, like 6 papers on it. I was pretty big into FDR, to be honest with you. Like, that was, as a kid, and you would think my parents would have picked up on that and been like, yeah, he's not going to be a Republican, honey. It's not going to happen. Like, I don't know why they didn't pick up on that.
FDR
was.
He wasn't.
Yeah, but okay, maybe they were blinded by that. But his agenda was not Republicanish. Some things were, yes, but his New Deal was not. I wrote about that like all the time. I bet my mom probably still has the damn papers. If you're listening, Mom, you can send them back to me and I'll post them on the show for.
I'm sure that'll be a happy letter. Here, Con, I'm so glad you were railing for socialist values. I have a suspicion that your family would be like, burn those papers in the backyard. We shall flick holy water on it.
But if we talk through, they're not Catholic. Stop. They're Baptists. We don't believe in holy water.
You just pour it out all over it.
You gotta. Oh my God. All right. So they talk about how they were forced with the strike, and so the whole point of this article is to say we can't no longer just have small movements where we protest in the street, where we are going door to door to try and fix elections, because it only works so far. It's not going to work to push a progressive agenda. But what do we do? What has worked in the past? Strikes, but massive strikes. There was a huge strike, and they actually signed something called the Warner Act. And I'll be honest, Wagner. Sorry, but yes, the Wagner, whatever. I called it Warner. I can't speak. Leave me alone. But
that's the drinking.
It's not. Nope. All right. Why do you got to derail this, Keith? He's just.
It's a gift.
But essentially, this is some of the start of the labor bills, right? And I will say that back then, it was a lot worse than we have it today. Not that today's good in any way, shape, or form, but it was a lot better than the early 1900s in manufacturing. And the Warren, I guess, how about this? Do either of you have the definition for the Wagner Act?
Of the actual literal, no.
Oh, all right. Well,
I mean, I've got your link to it from Britannica.
All right. See, you
it's the official the National Labor Regulations Act.
Yeah. You could have just, you could have just taken credit.
I could have, but
anyway,
didn't want to be misleading.
The Wagner Act is
let you run the show.
Is the National Labor Relations Act, and it is extremely important, and hence why we have labor unions that we have today. And I will tell you, even as far left as I am, I still believe in labor unions. I just believe they could be fixed a little bit, but they forced a lot of people, especially the agriculture and domestic workers, to join them in a basically a large nationwide strike, right?
Yep.
And that's why this is huge, because the idea behind a strike is a lot different than what we've been doing in the streets, right? I mean, we can walk in the streets, we can yell, we can scream, we can call into our job. But when you strike and say, hey, we're no longer going to we're going to shut every economy road down, what happens then? And I could tell you that the sad thing is we just had COVID, right, for 9-10 months now. And if we had better resources in the background, we could have, like in Michigan, we could have gone to Myers employees and say, if you all strike right now, unless you get double wages and more security for the COVID symptoms we're seeing, can you imagine what that would have changed nationwide? Like, seriously, think about it. If all the people at Myers and Family Fare, the largest ones, walk out and you leave all these small things, they're like, yeah, we're not going to do this. Think of how much money at razor thin margin that food has. What are you going to do with it? It's going to rot if you don't sell it. You're on a very thin, lean manufacturing schedule for produce. It's a fact. So when all this happens, if they all walked out and strike, don't you think a deal would have been struck, at least in Michigan? I mean, if I were Whitwinter, I'd be like, all right, double pay, or we're gonna give tax incentives to these corporations, and that's not very leftist of me, but let's give them tax incentives to pay their employees double, pay them double time, call it a day.
Yeah, we'd be looking at things like that. But one of the issues that you run there is that we basically destabilized labor unions so far, and we've strung out the working class so thin that they're literally willing to work for nothing. They're willing to work because the next bit of food isn't guaranteed. There's no major network of support where like the unions can get together and create food drives, and they've lost the strength to be able to sustain a real strike, a nationwide strike, a powerful strike. The labor unions, as far as I remember, up to somewhere near 20%, maybe 27% is the maximum in U.S. history, I believe, and somewhere in now, I believe we're somewhere between 5 and 7%. Like, labor unions are very, very small, very, very weak. In the few places where they are in the United Auto Workers and stuff like that, they're still pretty strong, but it's kind of a yin and yang thing depending on the economy. Like these kinds of strikes that people were doing, these were like strikes where like they were willing to strike with nothing, and they would go hungry too. Like they were willing to sacrifice. Like, I mean, it was utter chaos in the backdrops of what was happening here. Like these were real personal sacrifices. These are the kind of sacrifices that I don't think Americans really understand anymore or know ever really existed due to our lack of historical understanding. But like, there were some serious sacrifices made by the working class in this country to give the people the 8-hour work week and the stuff, or the 40-hour work week and the 8-hour work day that we have. And those kinds of things, if you spend enough time just revisionist history, reanalyzing these types of things, like you lose those things. And we've lost the strength of that working populace. And so these types of things, when you would see like, a strike this large, like I would love to see this kind of thing happen. I would love to see it happen exactly when Tanner mentioned it. I love seeing whenever I hear an Amazon warehouse saying, nope, we're not working today. And you never see rich people move as fast as they do when you threaten their wallets.
It's funny how that works.
That's really fair, man. That's like a big thing there.
The unions these days they've had such a bad reputation. I don't know, maybe we should look to people like Jimmy Hoffa, who really let the corruption run rampant. And I mean, I know
Detroit.
I know that, as with all things, they're subject to human limitations, human corruption, human improprieties, whatever you want to call them. But my biggest issue with unions today is that there is such a corporate mentality in them. is that they're almost run like a business themselves instead of a protecting people from exploiting businesses that would seek to exploit the staff. Like I remember I worked at for a union for about 11 years. It's with the grocery stores. I mean, I got amazing benefits. I had a lot better pay than most of my friends. Like I was making $25 an hour while I was in university, and a lot of the people that I was working with, they were all, like doing minimum wage retail jobs. I had dental coverage because of my stance in the union, and I had so basically the way vacation pay is accrued here, like if you're not paid out for it, whatever, is if you're part-time, it's like 2% of your income the company chips into your vacation fund, and you pull out of that when you get your vacation time. So that's your holiday pay. And after so many years, I bumped from 2% to 4% to 6%. By the time I left, I was, I think, at like 8%. So that basically, had I been full time, that would have been the equivalent of 8 weeks of holidays. And that was it was great. There was a lot of good things. Now, on the other side, the union was really slow to respond to grievances. The people who would get the union steward jobs, which were these cushy little positions, I have no idea if there was even a kickback or a bonus or anything, but I think it just made it so it was harder to like move you around if you were a bigger asshole than other people, because we did have a couple of people who they went for the shop steward, as they were called, and then they would basically just become lazy and loud-mouthed, bloviated, useless employees who really didn't contribute anything and would actually create more tension. And
the negative examples that ruin everybody's idea.
Exactly.
Like
And then,
that guy, that one bad guy.
And then it really didn't help the case that and then the union really didn't help their case, because one day out of nowhere, they didn't announce it, nothing. You didn't find out until we didn't find out until after the vote that they had used loopholes to basically raise union dues, but the voting period, they made it as small as possible and on the most inconvenient legal time they could do it. So not only did the student members who had to be in school, they couldn't go vote. Most people were working. Something like that. And it was really, really shady, and it was just an attitude that really told me that they just gave me what they thought I wanted to keep me happy and complacent, and then they were just going to continue taking more of my money and allowing my other crap coworkers to get priority. And I mean, unions do protect bad employees, and there needs to be something to help with that, because as somebody who believes in my hard work represents me, I take it personal when I see a coworker who's just, they're protected, but they're lazy, they're not doing anything. I'm covering their mistakes and all of that. And it really creates a lot of tension and animosity. But that infighting is part of the problem, and part of the reason why corporations get to keep winning is because if we're too busy infighting, we're not going to bother worrying about them. There's a bulldog in the backyard.
And I think that's a good point, because if we look at it, like when I was out consulting at a company last year that had a union, it was the same thing. Like, it was like, yep, you got this person. Well, did you do this, and this?
Yeah. And
it's like, what? Oh, I have to do this. I have to do 6 steps before we can write them up. What? And so it's those type of things. But I think the difference is if we know that this is a positive way to change and all that, why don't we look at what is corporate campaign finance? Because essentially it didn't before entail what it does now. And that's where the dark money aspect comes in. And before we get into that, though, I want to show this website, Open Secrets, actually will tell you who the donors are.
This opensecrets.org is awesome. I use them all the time.
Oh, I didn't know it was wow.
Yeah, opensecrets.org, like they show you all the major funding for whatever campaign, and it goes local too. Like they go to some really high priority local campaigns. You can see who put what, where, when, and how. It's awesome.
Yes, and the idea is to help break apart that anonymity. I'm not gonna say it right. Whatever.
Anemone.
There you go. I don't like that word at all.
But basically just remove the ability from people to hide behind corporate titles or whatever. So you're going to see investment groups, corporate names. You'll see people who just incorporated for some random thing, but like all that stuff is in here. You can find that incorporated number or that name, and you can actually search for those corporations, and you can find the people who own those corporations. It involves some time in journalism, but opensecrets.org is a great place to look at stuff. You can see that horrible signature there. God, it looks like I mean, I'll never forget it. I'll never forget that signature.
But here you go. You can see, you can see exactly what it is, right? And they give you all of this. Like, so it's not just the money, where it comes from, who it is. I mean, they're giving you descriptions, price range, all sorts of stuff, like assets.
Everything has to be legally, like, I guess, expounded on. Like, anything has to be actually put out there. Like, that has to be announced. They put out there.
Now, when Trump talks about his taxes and all that, I mean, right here, I mean, he's got a golf production. And this is why I picked this. I'm sorry. It was a little selfish of me because I wanted to go through this. He has Trump National Golf Club that he owns, right?
Oh, no.
And he has another one, Jupiter, Bedminster. Here's your Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's one of the things that you hear of people who are billionaires, millionaires, and conglomerates and money. So, like, you create corporations. Trump Turnberry, that's a really important golf course for him. But
I know it
but you hear about people.
Alcohol that
people hear a whole bunch of. You hear people put a whole bunch of like corporations together, and you see at New York on everything in this. And New York has a relatively lax tax plan, and you see a lot of Delaware, and you see a lot of Vermont as far as places but Delaware is the big one. It's like basically a money laundering site. The corporate tax law is so low and so light. It's like opensecrets.org will show you where these corporations are headquartered and all of that kind of stuff. And so, like, but you can just look into Trump's information. Like, these are literally where all of his numbers are, and these are the things that all the reporters use to make their big breaking stories when they find something else. They go through this publicly available information. And I mean, most of this stuff is like legalese, or, you need to be a CPA to really understand what some of it is. But in the end, it's really cool that it's just available for the average person to look through and see that just all of these crazy corporations, there's these Jupiter things over and over and over again, and all these places where Trump is making money. And it seems like he owns all of these things. So it's weird that he owns all these tiny little corporations that are all just kind of spending their money in the same place. Seems kind of like shell corporations in a game of,
like this one,
tax
Think
evasion.
Like a billionaire. Income asset about less than 200.
Publisher Random House is the book, so Trump is getting a book credit.
Yeah. So this book is not selling. The only one that sells is Art of the Deal, and they can't even tell me whether it's worth 100 or $1 million. They don't know. It's befuddles them.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, this is
well, like bringing that back into the Biden stuff though. Like, all of these resources are available for the Biden campaign, and you can see a lot of that kind of stuff that's flowing into the Biden campaign and then DNC, and these are some of the areas where the real progressive resources and like journalists, they look in there and like, this is gross, this is stupid. We know you're getting funded by corporate PACs, where you know that there's a bunch of money from the corporate sector, Wall Street, all that kind of stuff coming in there. We know they're paying for a lot of your things. And Joe Biden has said multiple times that he's not looking to do what Elizabeth Warren would have done, what Bernie Sanders would have done, what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would do, is like really strike a distance between politics and corporate, and that kind of big money financing for politics. And it's a shame, but it's not a surprise. And I just love having a resource where you can look at other people's stuff.
Yeah. I mean, this article right here actually talked about, how he claims, it's low amount of people, but it's really not. I mean, there's $200 million from donors that gave at least $100K.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's crazy. Like, I can't even imagine what $100,000 looks like in cash, because my life doesn't allow me to save that kind of money ever. Like, and I don't own anything fancy.
Well, that would just be like not taking a paycheck plus some for a year.
Yeah, like, all right,
you know what I mean?
Free. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
We got shit to do.
Add however many tens of $1,000s it would take to get you up to 100, and then just say you're not going to take money for a year, and then donate every single penny of it, the whole thing, even if there were no taxes taken out. Like, it's a huge amount of money. The average income in this country, I believe, is $49,000 last I heard. So that'd be doubling the average income, gross income of the average person in the United States. 2 years, two of them not getting paid anything. These people were like, I'm going to give this to a political campaign. Where are their finances before they make that decision? Because they're not going to be like, oh man, I'm going to eat a Taco Bell every day. There's no way they're that close to poverty that giving $100,000 in a single bump is a big deal, which is insane to the average person.
That's the idea, though. Is Biden's claiming these things, and if you're falling for it, man, you're out. Like, you have to understand that this is not true, and this here literally calls it out. And so, like, we could talk, again, and that's what I wanted to deal with, is where does this money come from? What do we do about it? Because this is bad. Like, this is really bad. And here's another link, I guess, before we get into that, and I'm detracting or derailing or whatever you want to call it. But here's another link that actually you can look at your company up and find out where it's spends its money. So if it's a small company, you probably can't do it,
It probably takes mostly publicly traded, but I'm sure there's some big private owned corporations that are in there as well.
Yep. So you can look where your company ranks. You can look where do they spend. So, I don't know if, who should we go with?
Look up Steelcase.
Steelcase. All right. No records found.
Yeah, that's a massive corporation. So, like, look up Amway. These, you know what? You may actually have to use the publicly traded, like.
All right, that's fair. Let's look up
Steelcase a minute. It's like, I don't know what Steelcase's ticker is. You may have to look that up. My guess is this is a situation where, like, Amway and Steelcase are huge corporations. I guarantee they're in here. You may just have to type it in, which is also funny because if this is a site that's supposed to be transparent and give people accountability, it's kind of hard to find $1 billion a year corporations. That sounds like a problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Why can we not find Steelcase Corporation, one of the biggest office furniture companies in the world?
So what's their ticker name on here?
It says SES.
Okay, so it is SES.
It's Steelcase Corporation or Steelcase. Yeah, well, I don't know. That's one of the things. Like, if we can't find a big giant corporation like that, let's look up something that we can find. I guess
Amazon
or AAA. Yeah, Amazon. That showed up. Yeah, Amazon.com. So this is giving us, like, these are the kinds of corporations that are like top tier corporations, but I guess Steelcase and Amway aren't big enough, which
yeah, that's a hard one to swallow. Those are $1 billion companies, right?
Yeah, so
and see, here's some of this has to, you actually have to dig further. Here you go. They donated to Democratic and Republican governors.
Oh yeah, no, it's the same amount too. It's the same amount. You see that?
Yeah,
110,000. So, like, that's one of the things that Jeff Bezos he donated with the Washington Post, and he donated with like a variety of things. Like, all of these guys that are super rich, they play both sides, especially because the Republican side is going to support corporate strategy, and the Democratic side is going to basically support the identity politics that all the people that work for these companies are supporting. So if a guy can play both sides of the coin, so to speak, like Jeff Bezos loves to do, saying, I own the Washington Post, I'm so progressive, and then he just dumps a whole bunch of money in the RNC through, you know, the Republican Governors Association, then, you know, it gets a bit fishy. And so, like, the people at the top are not playing one side or the other. It's not this George Soros takeover that everybody says it is. Everybody's playing all different sides, because in the end, it's you're looking to grow your finance, grow your wealth, and the only way you do that is by hedging your bets. You got to bet on both sides, and you got to bet more on the side you think is going to win, but you also have to hedge your bet on the other side. And so, I mean, I don't know. It seems like a decent resource, but I think it's going to be a resource that's only going to be for the biggest companies. And
And that was the whole point of
the
this.
global market.
Is that you can't find some of
Salesforce.
these companies. You can't find your company, right? You know, that's and these are very scary too. I mean, this just is a company that helps you create CRM tools and all sorts of things for your business, right?
Salesforce just did a huge merger this week, actually. They picked up a company that's doing some kind of chat function in their web video stuff. But either way, like, Salesforce is a huge corporation, and like all of these companies are making major moves involving billions of dollars, and they're all very, very, very involved in their politics. Like they're specifically involved in lobbying and all the places where they pay a CPA, they pay a lawyer, and they pay a lobbyist triple digit, you know, we're talking 6 digits easy, sometimes into 7 digits, you know, $1 million a year, to essentially, that's your job, is to find loopholes and find places where we can put money that's going to benefit our corporation.
Yeah, Amazon donated a total of $6.43 million last year.
Million? That's it? I don't know. I know it's just like, well, when in a corporation, like when you're the owner of 150 billion, it seems after his assets were split from a divorce, he's still over $100 billion. So I don't know. It's one of those things that, like, you start seeing the amounts of money that we're talking about here. Like, people are donating amounts of money that would liquidate your income for years.
Yep.
Just 1 year, years, plural. And they're flinging this money around on both sides. It's like when we looked at Salesforce, or was it Amazon? It was 110,000 on both sides. That would liquidate most people in the United States income for 2 years to both political parties in the United States. So what's the end game here? It's having political influence everywhere. And, you know, corporations essentially are playing both sides of the thing, because the argument that centrists and people on both sides are all kind of supporting the people at the top and not really helping the people at the bottom. These kinds of donations, when you see someone donating to both sides for the exact same amount, helps support those hypotheses. And so it's frustrating to see that, and it's something that, you know, Citizens United, progressives on the left, we're trying to get rid of. We want that dark money to be gone. So there's all kinds of corporate shell games and all that kind of stuff, like all these tiny little corporations. Everything doesn't have a big shiny Amazon logo on it. Everything doesn't have a big shiny Trump corporation logo on it. They're all these weird tiny little things, the way that, you know, you move money around in accounting and the tax loopholes and all that kind of stuff. Like the most recent tax code was supposed to simplify stuff, but it made it more complicated for corporate taxes. So there's all kinds of stuff that, you know, it's gross and it's difficult, and we need like a concerted effort and progressives to get involved in the government so they can make the changes from inside the system. Because like this is aside from like a total revolution and burning down the entire thing, you're never going to get inside and make enough changes unless we really have a concerted effort. I posted something not too long ago about progressives and non-believers all watching Scooby-Doo and realizing that in the end, Scooby-Doo was basically just somebody in a costume trying to steal your money every episode. Like often an old white guy trying to steal your money. Like if we could all just coalesce into a voter bloc between progressives, non-believers, and college educateds, like really coalesce in a strong formal way to like make a real political move to try to push and to overturn some of these kinds of corporate donating practices, we're not going to see any change. Biden is going to bring things back to the way they were, but the way they were wasn't particularly good for the average person. It was great watching the economy grow over the last 14 years, 15 years, but the average person didn't see a lot of those benefits. And you know, I mean, the biggest boost that we saw was the $600 in the unemployment and the $1,200 stimulus. And I don't think we're going to be seeing any more of that anytime soon, because
So they donated $5 million to this prop.
who's they?
Amazon, actually.
Okay.
Which is weird. Now, here's the problem, though, right?
Propsy.
Yeah. No, and I don't have a problem with that. We're not going to get into that. We don't have much time left, so I'm not going to get into that. The problem I have is the fact that there's still dark money, right? And it's been outed by more than one person, and even famous, like, I don't know what you want to call it, famous newspapers that are online now. Like, do they have a different name than what they're supposed to have?
Easy.
Yeah, news. They just call them newspapers. I don't know.
All right.
It's kind of like when people say,
newspaper.
"Well, like we're a podcast right now. Are we streaming exclusively to iPods?" No.
All right.
So-
Fuck off.
What?
So
What is this?
They talk about dark money in political donations in New Jersey, and this is not like a Republican guy. That's a Democrat. That's a Joe Biden right here.
Yep.
And the idea is there's all this dark money that goes
Whoa.
around because dark money is allowed to be funneled through these companies that are allowed to keep your personal information private.
Yep.
That's crazy. That's insane to me. If I own a $10 billion company and I'm donating $2 billion to the KKK, like I have to route it through the Cayman Islands and through all these other fancy names, fuck me. That's bullshit. Like, I don't know how this isn't shut down immediately. Like, this should be an immediate shutdown. And when we talk about protesting and all these other things, this fixes that. If Biden would come through and pass a law that said we're going to make everything public, nobody can have secret donations, we're not going to change what you're allowed to donate. We're just going to say no more secret donations. Can you imagine what would happen?
Oh, I can imagine very, very comfortably. The only thing I'm going to say is that with a 7 million vote surplus for the most, I mean, we're talking
Jim
hard
Carrey-ish.
hard vanilla. I mean, just he isn't even spicy vanilla. He's even French vanilla. He's the one color in that cheap 3-color gallon bucket. Like, he is the most plain vanilla in the center of the page, the process. And like, he's benefiting from all of these groups, from all of this spending, and then on top of that, he has, a 7 million vote surplus. So that's basically gonna to lock in the mandate that, like, no, this is all good, this is all fine. It would be like the philosopher Zizek, who basically said he hoped Trump would win so that he would show the American people that it would, like, you are on a path of destruction, and it would change our perspectives. And the fact that it's a one-term presidency and we have changed the system back to where it was, it makes where it was look so great, but it's in reality this centrist paradise. But compared to where it was the last 4 years, it looks like, this leftist, the number of people calling Biden a socialist, leftist, communist, whatever, like, the fact that that is even a possibility is a direct result of, some of these kinds of benefits that by winning Biden has. I don't know what the conditions need to be for this kind of stuff to be taken seriously, but I know a Biden presidency isn't the kind of presidency that will get dark money taken seriously. Like, they're going to support it and revel in it because it kind of sort of helped them get the Trump thing out of office. And so, like, I don't know, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the problem. That like
we love
that
it when
is-
it helps us. We hate it when it hurts us.
No, I don't like it when it helps us. I want it to
Well,
not help anyone.
I mean America itself.
No,
The American machine
Yeah.
doesn't have the self-actualizing tendencies to really look into this. They love the thing when it helps them. They hate the
All
thing
that
when it
matters
hurts
is the
them.
winning.
Yeah.
Guess what? Guess who had the highest one though?
I want to say Obama.
I don't know.
Yes.
Was it? No, man.
The re-election.
The re-election campaign, yeah.
Yes. That's crazy. And I'm sorry, but like, and this is where I get angry and passionate about this type of stuff is because
this kind of thing actually
this
helped
is crazy.
Trump win. This kind of dark money stuff, like people thinking there's a deep state.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
It's not that. It's not a
Well,
real
no.
true deep state. It's
No.
we know
No,
who these
it's just-
companies are. We know what the laws are. We refuse to address them.
Yeah. Well,
You had this in
it's
Canada?
either. I believe there's to some extent. I was kind of looking through open secrets there, and it seems to be Americentric. So I'll have to see if I can find something similar for Canada. But I do know that there have been issues with conflicts of interest for donors, corporate donors to political parties. But it's I don't know if it's quite as prominent, though.
Don't worry.
Really,
Our virus will eventually leak into your country, and you'll have the
stop
same.
that!
It'll be
No.
It
great.
already has.
Stop it! Stop it!
We talked to Abby earlier. She says viruses propagate. This is not
Yeah.
unnatural. Human evolution. You're all going to be Americans. We're all living in America. America. It's wunderbar.
Danke schön, Rammstein.
Stop it.
Oh,
Stop
God,
it.
I
You
wish I-
just made me super depressed.
I
had
know, I
tickets to see
really-
them.
This would have been
Coca-Cola,
it would have been if I
SpongeBob.
managed to get myself to see them. It would have been the first time I would have actually seen them live. I was supposed to see them with the Pledge of Allegiance tour, and they canceled on that show. And I saw that I saw System of a Down, Slipknot, and Trivium, and a couple other bands, but I never got to see Rammstein. That's the
Rammstein.
only band that I listened to just on the regular that I never got to see.
When I was in Germany, they were playing at a music festival a week after I left in Munich, and I'm like, I want to go, but I can't.
And of course, they're responsible for dark money in the United States. Wait, what? No.
Well,
Okay, so this is probably going to be a bit of a deep dive, but I think I've.
tour.
Mota.
There you go. That's the first time I ever saw them.
Nice.
Anyway, we digress. It sounds like the after show, but if you want to join us for the after show, you can become a Patreon for as little as $1 an episode. So that's $4 to $5 a month. If you want to donate a little bit more, you're welcome to just create a one-time donation, whatever floats your boat. All the money just goes to pay into the show. None of us take anything out. We even have to pay for our own alcohol here. That's how poor this show is. Except for Keith, who doesn't drink alcohol any longer on the show, I guess. So.
It's because I'm broke.
All right.
Oh, dude, you're not making the case. For
I can't-
socialist
I
Canada
can't-
Right
I-
now.
I can't buy alcohol and have it last on the shelf the way I can with weed. Okay, $100 worth of alcohol
Okay,
could last me
okay.
a couple of weeks. $100 for weed, that's gonna last me.
All right, so you just made a case completely and totally for socialist Canada.
I know
Anyway.
priorities.
So we have our quick saves for the week, right? So I thought we should definitely not miss those this week. I don't know. I was looking through them. I'm very excited by them.
Yeah.
Compared to what I normally I kind of look at Hannah's and I'm like, yeah, no. Yeah, no. But this week his is off the chart. But before we get to his, it's hilarious as shit. Before we get to his, I'll show you mine. Guy Fieri. Yep, I couldn't help myself. I found this today and I just fell in love and I changed my quick save at the last minute because he has raised over $21.5 million to assist unemployed restaurant workers. Now, we're not going to go farther into this. I don't care right now if it went to a bunch of other things, or larger restaurants. I don't want to know that. I'm not going to do the research. If you want to prove me wrong, go ahead. But my belief, though, is at his true heart, because we've done segments on Guy Fieri before.
We listen to the comedies where he donates pretzel making machines.
Exactly. So
It's the best.
I genuinely feel he has done this.
Mm-hmm.
But if you prove me wrong, I'll give you $10. I don't know. But the idea, though, is that, look at this. $21 million a celebrity has to raise for out-of-work restaurant owners. Why the fuck isn't the government figuring out how to raise that? People gave $21 million. And here's the argument against the libertarian side of things. It's like, if people are willing to do this, why do we not just have base funds set up that people can donate to? Because you out of work, you want to donate to an unemployment fund? Here you go. I mean, every year in your taxes, you get asked if you want to donate to a Republican or Democratic campaign, right? You get asked that question, and I say no every year because if I want to give them money, it's on my terms. And by the way, I've never given money to the base organization ever in my life.
Yeah,
I've only donated specifically towards specific individuals ever in my whole life.
Yeah.
Anyway, but think about it. 21 million. People donated 21 million because a celebrity said, hey, this is a good idea. Why don't, maybe he should get a job.
I'm pretty sure he said, I'm Guy Fieri and you guys should do this.
All right, fine. Fair enough. He said it exactly like that in my head too.
But he yelled it over some chicken wings, and he poured some white gravy, some white flour gravy on top of it.
Ew. Anyway, I thought that was pretty epic. I don't know.
I mean, my perspective on him changed completely from when we did the show with him as the quick save and as like the comedy bit. It's just, I don't know. Like he gets made fun of, but it's one of those things where, you know, he's got some chops, and some of the things that he does are legit. Like that's a great example of it. And yeah.
So here's yours.
Mine's happy. Mine's great. Mine is a Reddit post of someone.
Hold on, Hannah.
Someone who went through.
Well, can we define great? Because I see pastor died,
Mm-hmm.
preacher died,
Mm-hmm.
COVID deaths,
Mm-hmm.
more COVID deaths. How is COVID deaths great?
So I've gotten past the point where I think that I can give people the benefit of the doubt and just allow them to just meh about this really serious thing. And I don't have a problem with people who from the pulpit, pastors from the pulpit, announce and say that this is a fake thing. It's not a big deal. Do we deny that COVID-19 exists, et cetera, and then those people contract and get super sick. It's hard to say I'm happy they died, but like, we need examples, damn it. And it's really frustrating to deal with it. But like, I honestly don't think in this country that anybody who is a denier or really in the communities of a massive denial that they can ever change their mind unless someone they love, someone they know, or someone they respect as a leader dies from this. And this is a great example, and it's a huge list. It just scrolls and scrolls, and we've seen how many thousands of people die from this. And so like there's a good chance that in the near future, as these vaccines are finally rolling out, that there will be someone in everyone's life who's affected by this. And it's really frustrating. It's really difficult to deal with because we're accelerating that pain, that sadness. And this list here is a great example of specifically and only pastors, religious folks, and religious leaders in religious communities who have died from getting this disease after saying they didn't believe in it, didn't think it was a real big deal, they shouldn't deal with it, deniers or whatever. And that kind of like direct karma is it's hard to find, and it's beautiful if this person found it online and just made a graphic out of it, because like that kind of reinforcement is unfortunately unnecessary. I would rather nobody ever died from it and we all learn from these things. Yes. But sometimes apparently it has to be worse. I don't know.
That's fair. I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was fun. I mean, there's just so many. Jamestown. It wasn't Michigan. I was a little disappointed. But yeah, all these pastors. I don't know. It's kind of weird. to think
Well,
about. Why is it all
following
them?
in the non-believer Reddits and subreddits and a variety of them, like you see these announcements and someone just grabbed them all and put them into one, and it's just like, okay, cool. If something is going to change the perspective of the non-believer, the conservative, maybe their church leader dying of the thing will change their mind. Otherwise, I really don't know what else will, because if they said God won't whatever and there's no then I don't know what else can change their mind. And I just saw Ocasio.
He did.
What's the next one?
You sure did.
Come on, Keith.
Don't threaten me with a good time, damn it.
So last week, Jagmeet Singh, I am sure you've heard me gush over that beautiful, beautiful man. The the leader of the federal NDP, New Democratic Party of Canada, challenged AOC to a match of Among Us. They did a live Twitch stream. Now, I'm going to warn you, it's about 6 hours. I didn't watch the full thing, but honestly, the fact that these two powerhouses, powerhouse politicians, no less, from each of our countries, who both seem to have a lot in common ideologically speaking, were able to kind of bond over this and really just kind of find a way to reach the people, or bring in young interest into it, because according to my wife, who works with kids who are like teenagers, Among Us is huge, and I don't know much about it, so I thought it was amazing. I thought it was wonderful. I told you, I'm old man now. Get off my lawn.
The grays are coming, but I'm happy that you think this is cool. This weird way of texting.
hey, in my day we had the
we didn't have QWERTY.
Yeah, T9. So I thought it was really awesome that we have these big name politicians who kind of represent specifically like our ideology, and are very much in line with what we want to see for the world, coming together and not just talking politics but just having fun. I thought it was an awesome Twitch stream. Again, haven't really watched that much of it. I didn't find out about it until it was after the fact, so I tuned in for a little bit and had to get back to living the rest of my life. So if you get a chance, check it out.
Twitch is interesting, but it's not a place I find myself very often.
Yeah.
One, because I don't do online gaming very much, but I'm gonna guess Tanner can't quite avoid it because his kids are kind of Twitch aged.
They are, yeah. Both my kids watch Twitch.
They're Twitchable.
I actually, you want to hear an old man confession? I don't have my own Twitch account. I use my son. I'm dead serious.
Oh, that's heresy, man.
Like, why have your own when I can just have his?
It's like using.
I don't need it.
That would be like you using, or your mother using your Twitter account.
Oh
no.
I mean,
just no.
Yeah. Your mom got your Facebook feed and she started posting all your religious memes.
Well, maybe he felt guilty because I gave him my Amazon Twine or Prime.
Twitch.
Whatever. Fuck you. Shut the fuck up. I'll mute you. You're done. No more. And I have
the Bezos Twine account.
Yeah, I have an Amazon Prime account. I have an Amazon Prime account. I own everything, buddy. I have an Amazon Prime account that I gave him the Twitch membership credit or whatever. Oh, you can't add yourself back in. For I don't know, like a year and a half, and finally, like I started watching a Star Wars X-Wing show that had Twitch memberships. That the only way to see some of their videos was that way. And I was like, why get my own? I'll just let him use it, and I'll just borrow his thing. And he didn't care. I don't watch any of his stuff. I'll tell you what, my phone lights up every 30 minutes at minimum with a Twitch notification because that's how many people he follows.
That's cool.
Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us. Oh, shouldn't have added him back in. Thank you all so much for joining us. We had an amazing night. If you would like, you can follow us on Patreon, and we have after shows content. And I'll tell you what, if we get more Patreons and you all want to join into the after shows shit, I'll add you. We'll do it until we get more than 50 Patreons. When I get 50 Patreons, we're going to stop. But until then, I'll happily do that if that's what people want to do.
If you know sign language, I'll learn it, damn it.
Okay. You learn it? There you go. Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us. Have a good night, And we'll see you next week with another amazing episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all. Banning Keith. Have a good night.
Canada.